Wall Street tried a coup, the plot nobody talks about. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Hidden History with Frank Strickland. It was a time of breadlines and broken dreams, a time when the very foundation of this great nation seemed to crack and groan under the weight of the Great Depression, a time when a new president, Franklin Roosevelt, promised a new deal to a struggling populace. But not everyone was cheering. In the mahogany-paneled offices of Wall Street, in the hushed velvet-draped clubs where fortunes were made and lost with the flick of a pen, there was a growing murmur, a whisper that turned into a rumble of discontent. They called Roosevelt a socialist. They called him a traitor to their way of life, to the very principles of free enterprise. These were titans of industry, men whose names echoed with power and prestige. Morgan, DuPont, names that built America, and now feared it was slipping from their grasp. They saw their fortunes threatened, their control diminishing, and they decided, in their quiet, calculating way, that something had to be done. So they began to hatch a plan so audacious, so daring, it sounds like something from the pages of a dime store novel. A plan to replace the man elected by the people with a strong man, a man who would restore order, their order. And who better to lead this charge than a hero, a man beloved by the common soldier, a two-time Medal of Honor recipient, a living legend, Major General Smedley Butler. They approached Butler through a rather curious intermediary, a bond salesman named Gerald McGuire. McGuire spun a tale of an army, a private army, of 500,000 disgruntled veterans. They would march on Washington, not to overthrow the government outright. No, that would be too crude. Instead, they would merely pressure Roosevelt, convince him to step aside, or perhaps to remain a figurehead while Butler, the Secretary of General Affairs, truly ran the show. A strong hand for troubled times, you see. But Smedley Butler, he was a patriot. A man who fought for his country, not against it. And when he heard their whispers of a coup, their dark designs on the very heart of American democracy, he did what any true American would do. He went to Congress. He testified. He laid bare the plot, naming names, detailing the dark intentions of these powerful men. The McCormack-Dickstein committee listened, aghast. They investigated. And while the full truth, the precise extent of every man's involvement, would remain shrouded in the mist of history, the committee concluded that indeed such a plot had been discussed, had been planned. The newspapers, they scoffed. A hoax, they cried. A wild tale. And in the shadow of the Great Depression and the rising storm in Europe, the story faded, pushed aside by more immediate anxieties. No one was ever prosecuted. The powerful men went back to their boardrooms, their clubs, their quiet lives of influence. And the American people, for the most part, never knew just how close their democracy had come to the brink. A plot conceived in boardrooms, whispered in hushed tones, and exposed by a true American hero.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government.